Cynthia, welcome to Meet the Author. I guess this is the pre-show, and we're out here enjoying the breeze and the outdoors, but pretty soon you'll be going in to address your audience about your latest book, A Good Case.
A Good Case.
Intriguing title, because it can take you in a lot of different directions. So for our viewers who can't make it here tonight, can you give us a nutshell of what the book is about?
Okay, so A Good Case is the behind-the-scene look at the billion-dollar home health care agency. And it's narrated by two caregivers working in Beverly Hills. So the caregiving industry have a lot of nuances to it, as we know. And people have different experiences with that. So A Good Case is a mystery adventure. But in the caregiving world, a good case, the verbiage is a good case. Like if they send you on an assignment, they will say, it's a good case. And so I thought that's a title. Yes.
That's intriguing. It's intriguing. Now, in this book, your main caregiver is Sheila.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now Sheila's had experience in the caregiving industry. She's showing us all these facets. But did you have any personal experience before you started writing the book about caregiving or the role of a caregiver?
I would say yes and no to some degree. When I was growing up, before they even called, helping out your neighbor, senior care, before it was considered caregiving, it's just what you did as a teenager, like babysitting or getting a job or fast food. I'm not comparing senior care to fast food, but it was a job. But it was more of community.
Right.
And caregiving is a sense of community. With all the great agencies we have today, it's a community, community-based businesses is where you go first. But so yes, and I dabbled in it through the years, through college, and when I needed to make ends meet, because caregiving is personal. It is something that comes from the heart. It's human kindness. You can't get a degree in it. Other people do, but you can't. To me, it's more about, are you a caring person that understands what it means to take care of another human being, the sacrifice, the commitment, the common sense that comes with being a person, that it's a big responsibility to help another person, for them to trust you. So for me, it's more of a personal trait that you have, your values, your morals. That to me is a component of a caregiver, and I don't think that you take on an employment thinking you're going to gain those things. It has to be already attained.
Yes, and this topic, I'm not sure you could have picked a more relevant topic for our demographic here in Sun City. Let's face it. So, while this is a novel, there are still going to be some takeaways we'll have about the subject of caregiving. Can you give us a couple quick ones?
Okay, so a lot of times families do struggle with the decision of, do I go fly across country, change my entire life to take care of mom and dad, or do I find someone I can trust? Both scary, both life-changing. So through a series of circumstances, I discuss all of it. All the ins and outs are covered in A Good Case. It's for everyone. And let me tell you, it just was my way of just saying, you know what? Let me just do something lighthearted and to discuss the experiences people go through, because people have so many different experiences with that time when we all have to suit up and it's our turn to take care of our loved ones, or parent, aunt, uncle, grandfather. And so they'll take away a lot. They'll take away the knowing that a caregiver is the extension of you not being there, and it's okay if you can't.
Now, I was talking with someone yesterday about your book,
Mm-hmm.
and he was mentioning to me, well, it's caregiving, and I said, well, the true story is that caregiving, whether it's daycare or senior care, it is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of looked at me, and it was a little taken aback. And as we started to discuss that subject, I'd like your take on, as you did your research, as you've had your experiences, what would you say is the status of caregiving? How is our quality here in the U.S.?
Okay, so I do believe that my writing this book has been a catalyst to contribute to making it better. I think we all can make things better if we just, decide to give it a shot and put in our input and do the best that you can is part of making any change. So I'm not an expert, but what I can say is that you have good and bad in everything. So there's always the business that's not so good. I talk about it, and I talk about the business that are awesome, that are in it not just for the money. Although it's a money-making business, people have the right to make money, equal energy, equal pay. If somebody's spending 24 hours in your home, yes, they should get paid. So, but there's the quality that comes with that standard, right?
Right, exactly.
So it's a business because someone has to, if it's okay that it's a business, but if you're offering this, that, and this for this amount, then the senior should receive that. And so we just cover different circumstances with that.
Thank you for coming to meet the author. And this is Cynthia Hammer, which she probably introduced herself already, but she's going to talk about her book.
So I just tell a lighthearted story through a series of circumstances about different cases that I studied for a couple of years through friends, through caregivers, and through what I experienced for the few months that I did work. It was enough to say, you know what, this does need to be talked about because a senior has a lot of questions and so does the family. And in a good case, all that gets answered. Because in a good case, the question is, what is a good case? So I answered the question, what is really a caregiver? Let's start with that. What is really a caregiver? Because not everybody should be a caregiver. I'll say it. But there are great caregivers, and your best caregiver is usually working. If you want to know, where to find a caregiver, find the one that's been employed for a while, and hopefully her senior is living, and she has just moved on to another case. My favorite experience was a case, I tell it different in the book, but it was a case that I actually worked. And I had a girlfriend who kept calling me, and I said, no, I can't do this because when I get called to an event, I can't have you schedule me somewhere, and I have an event. I'm trying to, get this writing thing going, So, but she was so sweet, and she just went around town and checked on her neighbors, and she says, one day I want to have a big, huge agency here in Orange County. And I was up in Los Angeles County. First of all, it's too far. It's like a 2.5-hour drive, traffic, 3.5. And I said to her, she said to me, would you come work for me? You have that thing. And I said, I know, but when we got along great, I said, I wish you all the best. She was just checking on neighbors. And one day I get a call. Now she says, I have this lady. I really need your help. The lady she's not getting better. She's 93 years old. And I've been knocking on doors and getting some business, a couple hours here, a couple hours there, building my business. This lady is a 24-hour case. I don't have anybody that wants to commit. I have my husband and my dog. That's me. And so she said one day she didn't hear from her. She would knock on the doors, weekly, and she didn't hear from her for 3 days. And she begged her for like maybe 6 months to get a key from her. And she refused to give her a key. She finally gave in and gave my friend the key. And when she didn't hear from her, she was able to go into her home, and she found her laying in her garage. She had laid in the garage for 3 days. She fell. And if it wasn't for, I'll use her name, Lori. That's not her name in the book, but Lori. Finding her, she wouldn't be here. But she needed someone, and I'm going to toot my horn, she needed someone with some damn common sense. And I really didn't want to take the case. It was hours away, but I have to admit, I did need the money. I'm living in Calabasas, and everything was like, it was good for both of us. But the key was, this lady was dying. I wasn't ready for that. But I thought, okay, so I'm going to go old school. I'm going to do what my grandmother would do. I'm going to tell everybody, get the hell out of here, because they're coming in and out. It's a rotation, because she's financially stable. She's got caregivers coming in and out. And she's laying in her bed like she's ready to leave this world. I said, I pulled the owner aside at the time, and I said, look, if I'm going to do this case, everybody's got to go and take the germ with them. And so everybody left. And my grandmother lived off of this makes my husband cringe a little, Clorox and Pine Sol. And I tell people if I could drink Pine Sol, I would, because I love the smell of Pine Sol. I do. So it was bleach for her house, and everything just got bleached. And she stayed in that bed, and I couldn't, and then I checked her medicines, and went through all the cupboards, and she had all this food, and she wasn't eating anything. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Is it called Dilaudid or something? It was something strong that was knocking her out. She's 93. Good Lord, I couldn't take that. And I think somebody might have been taking it. Now I'm going off the cuff, but why would you give that to her? So everything was out of sync. The owner and I talked. And she wouldn't get out of bed, so I went in my purse, and I said, Mrs. So-and-so, do you trust me? And she said, yes, dear. And I said, would you take these two? I know I'm not supposed to give it to you. Might want to not record that now. But I gave her 2 Alka-Seltzers. And I said, I just need you to start feeling better so I can get some food in you. And within the next morning, she woke up, and I said, are you able to get up out of this bed? And she was not yet, but I got her to the bathroom and back, was able to bathe her. So she was not in that knocked out state. So I pulled the turkey out of the freezer, thawed it out, peeled some potatoes, and I cooked. She was sleeping all day, and I heard her call, and I went to see. She goes, I smell something cooking. And I said, yeah. She goes, is that for me? I said, it sure is. We're going to eat. Because, who wants a tuna fish sandwich every day and a little cup of soup? You want some food. So I just cooked for her, and I gave her the old-fashioned Southern, what we do, we feed you, we love you, we take care of you, and not be afraid to engage. Everybody tippy toes, not everyone, but the good caregivers care. So she didn't make it to the table, but I brought her that big plate of food, and she ate every bite. And she started coming around. And she started coming around. And she started coming around to the point she said, get out of my house. And I knew you were feeling better. No, but she got her spunk back. She's fast. I had no idea she's a retired military woman. And anyway, she came around, and it was great. Okay, so basically for me, a good case is also, that's most important, is giving the voice for the caregiver. Because what I found out going to Los Angeles, one of my girlfriends that's in the business is probably one of the best caregivers I've ever met. She's just good. And the family wanted her privately for themselves. And the agency said, now this is maybe some of y'all cringe, but here we go. Okay, so brace yourself. The agency said, no, you have to buy her. And how much was the cost to buy her from their business to the household was 10 grand. And I said, last time I checked, isn't that slavery? Like, what the hell? Now, we're going to leave it right there, because I don't go there in this book, because I think we're all big girls and big boys, that we understand what life is. So I didn't go there in this book. But it really shocked me. That's one of the reasons I wrote the story. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If she's really that good, can she get a percentage of the agency maybe? Like, why would you even say that? Or why would you, better yet, just see, when caregiving first started, the agency, some of you guys might be too young to remember this. But when the agencies first started, caregiving was the agency would find you a caregiver, and then they wipe their hands. You pay them, the client would pay them the fee, and they would wipe their hands and say, you two go off into the sunset. But the client still needs protection, because the caregiver could have been like not great. So for different reasons, they set up an agency to protect the senior. But also, then you have that system setting up a system that says, okay, Miss So-and-so, you may fall, this may happen, and you may need us. So I didn't get into that here, but that is the ins and outs of it. So I can't say, speaking as a professional, but I do have common sense when it comes to business. So you have to really decide for yourself, and it's okay if you decide to go into a business and start a business, great. And if you decide that you need the help of a caregiving agency or independent private duty, which I prefer private duty. I think private duty is awesome. It's your decision. And remember, it is your decision. That's it. That's just what it comes down to. It's nobody, we all like to make a check, but it is still your decision. So that might have upset some people. If there's anybody that owns an agency, is anybody here owns an agency? No? Okay, wonderful, I'm safe. Okay, so open up for questions. Any questions, please? Anything?
What took you from the Chesapeake to the Pacific?
Okay. You, sir. Okay, no, I'm saying you go first. Okay, so Chesapeake, writing my first novel, so as you know in life, you could feel when it's time to go. And we could feel, my husband and I prayed, and the answer was California. He had the same answer from God, California. So we both said, I know where we're supposed to go. We said at the same time it was California. But I knew that I needed to get my books to film. I knew I had something to say, and I wanted a bigger audience to say it to. And I wanted to push myself and be all that I could be. Because, two things happen. Either you fail or you succeed. That's it. It's not that scary, but you go, and I've always wanted to cross country. I've never been cross country. I grew up as a country girl. I didn't see a whole lot. I wasn't introduced to a whole lot of things until I met my husband. I got out and stuff, went to the beach, go to Ocean City, you go to drive to Florida, that's a big deal. But I didn't get out, and he was the person who said, let's just pack it, and I was like, oh my God, we're going across country. It was great, and so I landed in California and started making some friends, and my first author signing was in Malibu, California. I was in this huge pavilion thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And all my hands were shaking. In walks Owen Wilson, Cat Williams, A. Martinez, the guy from the Desperate Housewives. They're just in Malibu shopping, and I'm like, and I hear my voice echo, and who did you say, 007? Yeah. Pierce Brosnan. Oh yeah, Pierce Brosnan. Yeah, stuff like that. And I found myself being grateful and humble. And I thought, okay, maybe there's something to this, because I didn't plan this. It wasn't even a prayer like, please let me meet Pierce Brosnan. Please let me meet Sam Elliott. Drool, for sure. Oh, ladies, good Lord. Anyway, okay, so there's the answer to your question. Next question.
The title, A Good Case, is that just one case, or that's a case for the industry? How many cases are in that book?
Okay, have you read it yet?
No, I'm not ready to buy it, but give me 5 minutes, I'll be right back.
Okay. We got a comedian. You want the mic? Okay, so a good case is a series of circumstances. So it's like, I think 10 cases we go through Philly into Los Angeles. But a good case is a terminology. Does anybody want to guess? A good case is what caregivers use. It's like a code word. If I go up to a caregiver, if I'm in a Walmart, and if I see somebody with a uniform on, I say, is it a good case? They'll laugh, because they know what it means. It's what an agency tells you to get you on the case that's not so good. It's a good case. And you get there, and you're babysitting for children, cooking dinner, the husband's chasing you around the house. You think I'm joking, but talk to some caregivers. It's some really, really interesting stories. So there's a book here, and guess what? The good news is I've written a sequel. We are done the sequel. And it's called Who Is at the Door? And it comes out next year. And the book launch party will be at Burnt Church Distillery.
I have had the privilege of meeting you on a couple of occasions at book club forums. Mm-hmm. So I want to go back a little, and I want to start with your first book, Iceberg. Okay, now, here's where I see your humor. Some of the names you give people, but Iceberg is your main character there is Sherry, okay? And Sherry evolves in this story. So can you tell us the evolution that we're going to see in the book Iceberg?
Okay, so the main character is Sherry Sweetstone. So Sherry Sweetstone is a young girl growing up in the country along the Chesapeake Bay. The main character lives in a diverse neighborhood. Her best friends are from a diverse culture. And so Sherry is one of my favorite names. People always say, why did you choose Sherry? I wanted to be called Sherry when I was a kid, so when I wrote my first novel, I named the character Sherry.
Well, after I saw Sheila, I was beginning to wonder if you had like that pattern thing going there. Sheila, Sherry.
I love Sheila. Yeah, exactly. So Sherry Sweetstone is for youth and young adults, and she's sweetly stoned. And I'm not saying that it's a right thing to be stoned, but at 13 she tries pot. She puts it down. You know, she doesn't follow that crowd, but it's kind of that's the underlying sense of humor, because what happens is when you're a certain age, you do get bullied into doing things you don't want to do. And we do need to talk about it, and kids need a safe place to talk about it. And if they can't talk about it, they can read some experiences with this young character, how she decides to do what is right when no one's looking, because I grew up in a time where the parents sent you outside and we were just outside.
We were wild creatures.
Right. And we came in at dark with street lights. Or if you were with a certain, somebody 2 to 3 years older than you, if they were in the vicinity, you could stay outside.
Now, before we move on, because Sherry does stay with us for another book. So
yes.
We're not going to leave her.
Okay.
But I've got to ask you, it has always been interesting to me about the name spelling of iceberg. And I thought that maybe there's some, like, tell me, what's the real B-U-R-G?
So we answer that in the sequel, The Seven Rivers. But my editor and I went back and forth on the correct spelling of iceberg, 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 but we discovered that through different regions, the further north you can pronounce it, and everyone knows it's iceberg. I know I had to do that research, but we discovered that. But it was very important to stay to the story, and the children spelled it with the U on the beach, when they draw it on the beach.
Okay.
So we had to, and then explain it why to our readers.
We're going to move on to your second book, and this is The Seven Rivers. And we have little sweet Sherry, and we're going through some issues in this book. We've got the typical adolescent things. You're again seeing diversity, peer pressure, bullying. What motivates you to take on those challenges? You've already said we need to talk to the children about it, but here it hits hard. So what was the motivation to continue that teaching and that bring up the sore subjects, but go through them?
Well, part of it, of course, is pulling from my childhood. And, you know, I had parents that worked, you know, and we weren't, you know, my mom did not need us coming home. I'm not saying we couldn't have, crying about school, the lack of a better word. So, but I know children have two working parents. And you may not be able to, you feel like you're a burden, but you're not. But you feel like you can't talk to them because you want to be the one less problem for them. That's how I felt. But that wasn't the case, but that's how I felt. So I always found that with Iceberg, the children would come up to me and tell me how much, and they would tell me secrets in my ear that they haven't told their mother. And I said, she's fine, she's just sharing, that they haven't talked about. And I said, okay, there's something here. Because sometimes in a book, I escaped in books when I was a kid. I always escaped. That was my saving grace. If I could get inside a book, I could get out of here.
Now, that reading must have taken you on a lot of journeys, because while we are sitting here talking to you, the author, you're also an editor, you're a publicist, and my favorite, radio talk show host. I can relate to that a little. How do all these roles work together?
Okay, so I started the Hammerway show. My publicist in LA always said, you got it, kid, there's something about it. He always encouraged me, and he is actually Irwin and Irwin, and his brother wrote for Johnny Carson. So I just stumbled upon him, and he wasn't taking any more clients, but he took me on. He said, there's something about you. So he always encouraged me. And so one day he said, you don't need me. You just need to go out there and just be you. And I'm like, oh, really? So I thought, well, I started a radio show, KCAA, the hammering. He used to say, oh, hey, it's hammering away. How are you today? That's how he always answered the phone. I said, well, can I steal that? Because that sounds pretty good.
And they already took Hammer Time.
Right, exactly. And I get that a lot, Hammer Time. So I did the radio show, and I started, and it's Los Angeles, so celebrities will call you and say, hey, I have a show this week. And one day I got a call. Well, I actually had solicited Larry Dunn of Earth, Wind & Fire. And one day I get this call and said, hello, Mrs. Hammer. And I'm like, and he said, this is Larry Dunn. I'm like, oh, yeah, right, whatever. Steve, stop calling me. Stop playing. I'm ready to go on the air. He called me back. And I said, oh, my God. So I fanned out. And I realized that where I was at, people have the need to promote. I'm in Los Angeles. Hello. They're promoting their work.